Cool. All right. Well, hello, and yeah, it's absolutely amazing to be here. So it's been a sort of a one of my goals for 2024 was to come to an overseas conference. Kind of Australia's a far away from everything except Antarctica, so um, they don't have many conferences down there. So we could organise one, maybe. Yeah. So I'm here to have a chat about more open source stuff. So this is swiftDialog open source journey for me. And open source shenanigans. When I originally submitted this talk, it was actually called "So You Want to Make an Open Source App." So how to encourage people, to contribute to open source apps. I've been informed that there was a previous presentation about this, so you should go back and have a look at that if you want to hear more about stuff. Someone else who's doing it longer than me. Anyway, yeah. So open source journey. So. Bit of an introduction. So for me, I've had the advantage of being able to, the pleasure, I guess, of taking advantage of a lot of these open source apps. These things kind of made my Mac admin career as I was coming up through, hey, we've got to support apps and Macs in enterprise now. So, looking around for like, how do I do that? Existing community, it's been around, Greg's been around for, like started Monkey in 2008. So, it's been really great. I've leveraged a lot of this. So my thinking coming into this was, how do I contribute? And I've done the exact same thing. So I've contributed to Monkey in sort of documentation and the odd PR request, which I sometimes get in. I haven't done a commit for a while, but I've sort of been busy with other things. So my sort of two answers to that and my sort of want to put something out there is swiftDialog and a tool called Outset, if you've been using that. And I'll sort of go into a bit of what type of small change PR that I did for Outset. So I'm going to talk about, firstly, probably the one that most people recognize me for, which is Outset. No. But yes, no, I'm going to talk about Outset first. So Outset, originally, so Joe, where are you? Somewhere? Up in the back? Don't hide. I want to give it back eventually one day. No. So yeah, so Outset, originally a Python project. So look after, login items and stuff like that. And I, having a look at that project and having used that project, had some sort of thoughts come into when macOS 13 came out, and it started popping up all these dialogues and stuff about, oh yeah, sorry, thank you to Joe. So yeah, so I had a bit of a think about, what can I contribute to the project, and how much of that should I do? So yeah, one of the things with macOS 13 is now we have a whole bunch of dialogues that pop up now. If you have sort of launch agents and launch daemons, they appear into the login items. People can go in there, users can go in there and turn those on or off. And I was really sort of interested in how can we sort of like mitigate against not just people doing that, but also sort of cleaning that up a little bit and making it look a bit nicer. So Outset's originally written in Python. I sort of thought this would be a really great opportunity for me learning Swift. Could I take this Python code and then translate it into Swift, being the new hotness? Other reason I wanted to do that is Apple's obviously, pulled Python 2 out of macOS, and, we now have to sort of like BYO Python 3, wherever that comes from. There's some good options out there. But I wanted to make sure that I had something which didn't have any dependencies, that I was reliant on another library or something like that I had to install before I installed this thing and end up in a state where I've got the thing that I want, but I don't have the thing that it depends on. So I wanted a sort of cohesive, like all in one sort of thing. So thinking about Python to Swift, essentially the thought process I went through was, how does this work at a functional level? What is it actually trying to do? And then looking at each tiny little block of code and going, well, how can I take that, what it does, translate that into how you would do that in a Swifty way, and then compile it. I think I was having a chat to Greg yesterday about this. I literally just took the Python code, copy and pasted that, put that in a Swift project, commented it all out, and then just started uncommenting bits and then see, where the errors are. So it tends to be a fairly good way. So I took this on because, I was interested in just trying something new. It was it sort of kicked off as was hoping it was going to be easy. It turned out it actually wasn't that hard. So I think I got the first compiled version. Only took me like a couple of days of tinkering around. A bit of searching around. The documentation out there is it's actually pretty good for this kind of stuff. It's actually, the code is fairly basic as far as Swift code goes. And for me, that was actually a really good way to find out that you're like, yes, these things are easy. Like, we can just go and just like build a Swift thing, and then it sort of encourages me to sort of go on to other things. So that was Outset. It's now Swift. So Outset version 4 is a full entire Swift compiled binary, and because of that, all these little background items and stuff like that we have for scripts and all that sort of whatnot, if you've got your login items and all that sort of stuff, can now just appear as this item is managed by your organization. They don't have to see anything else. So, if you've got sort of needs for login scripts and you're building your own launch agents and stuff like that, it might be a good way to clean it up. So this was my end goal, and I sort of reached my goal of what I wanted to do, how I wanted to improve the project, and then that was we then sort of released that as a on the MacAdmin's open source. So there's some great resources there. And I think that was the first project that was released under the new, once they released it, I can't remember, yeah, something like that. So again, that was a bit of a, why not? Like, I think you just sort of announced that this was available for people to add to, and what a great way to sort of throw it off my repo and put it onto someone else's, where other people can sort of be, well, I mean, apart from the fact that I'm removing my name from, the sort of the repo location, the other thing with MacAdmin's open source is that it then becomes it's a bit more of an encouragement to say, well, this is not just your project, this is a MacAdmin's project. And the idea there is to sort of like encourage people to sort of dive in and come up with ideas and thoughts, and again, documentation and bits and pieces. So for more support, Joe's up the back. No. So my other project that I've been working on, so this one is a from scratch project called swiftDialog. This was a exercise for me initially in solving a problem that I had, which was a need for a sort of an expressive and good-looking sort of user dialogue that I can throw up in front of people. And the other one was learning how to write SwiftUI. So when I started this, macOS 11 had just come out. SwiftUI had been released with macOS 10.15. So the very sort of early days of SwiftUI on macOS. macOS 11 had enough improvements in it over the previous version to make it viable to make this. So I did the thing that most people do, and is I stole the code from Nudge. So, some of the hard work there was already done. So I went and got it. But so this is what my dialogues were sort of like looking for before. Obviously, the old AppleScript display dialogue. I've been playing with this kind of stuff for a while. I actually did a lightning talk in 2017, so this is at XWorld, where I was actually writing AppleScript Objective-C, and if you think Python Objective-C is a bit weird, this is weirder. But it does work. It compiles as an app, and then you can do all sorts of stuff that you can make your dialogues look like AppleScript dialogues. And sort of that was what I was after, like a bit of a native feel, and I've sort of been on that kind of journey for a little bit as a sort of goal that I wanted to reach. So my first version that came out, this is literally all it could do. It had a bit of a title, had some text. I could change the icon, and I had a couple of buttons. That was it. You couldn't change the size of the window. You couldn't do anything else. And part of that was because I didn't know how to do that in SwiftUI yet. So I knew how to make something that looked like what I needed to do, but that served that purpose then. And then what I had to do after that is iterate over that. And so what I've been doing since this version is essentially that. Each time I do a release, I'm generally just doing like, one or two sort of new features. As I learn something, I might add it in. As I learn, oh wow, I did this completely wrong. So the code in this version, I don't think any of the code in this version actually still exists in swiftDialog. So rapid iteration sort of helped there. Getting feedback from people was a really sort of key point in this. So I think this first version, the icon was literally like you just an image on your computer. And one of the first requests I had come in was like, hey, can I get an image resource from a URL? So that was a really great dive in. Getting that initial feedback was really good. So with this, I had to then, do the thing that Greg mentioned in his last talk, which was get permission from my employers to open source it. So I sort of thought, well, this is a tool that I like. I've used other people's tools in my career. Maybe this dinky little thing might get some traction, or someone else might find it useful. Can I throw the code out there? And essentially, they just did the same thing. They said yes. So it wasn't a huge issue, but it definitely would have been an issue if I just pushed it out there and didn't ask. So absolutely, sort of, if you're thinking about doing anything like this, just get permission. So yeah, so they gave me the big thumbs up, and I'm now here talking in front of you guys. So picking a license type for this project, we've got internally, we have several options. One of them was a MIT-based license, and that seemed to work well for me. So the MIT license, I felt was a good compromise between sort of sharing and putting the code out there, and sort of having the ability for other people to use it in the way that they need to use it. So I didn't want to put any sort of undue restrictions on people sort of using this. So MIT license lets me, or lets anyone actually look at the code and go, well, I like this little bit. So what you've done here seems pretty cool. I'm going to pinch that. And so, you can do that, and you don't have to worry about attribution or anything like that. You can just go and take it. That's perfectly fine. You can put it in your own project, and you can start selling that project. You can take swiftDialog and you can start selling it if you really want to. If you want to take on the support for that, that's perfectly fine by me. But yeah, so far that hasn't really happened. There's a great, if you're interested in what kind of licenses are available and what they do, there's a great website called chooselicense.com. So it goes through all the sort of various license types, the pros and cons. And it's a really good resource if you're sort of looking for, either making a decision or justifying a decision for a particular license type that you want to open source for. QR code, chooselicense.com. I think it's there. So the other question that came out was like, who owns the code? So on the copyright information on the swiftDialog license, you'll see it's copyright Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, which is the organisation I work for. So we have essentially it's a state any code that I work on, that if I'm doing it on either like a work device or doing it during work time, obviously that IP is then sort of owned by the organisation. So the ownership of the code for swiftDialog as a copyright is with CSIRO. Having said that, MIT license allows you to sort of take that and fork it and go and do your own thing. So, that's again, sort of like one of the benefits of that. But it's important to remember when you're open sourcing stuff, just to clarify, what you can actually do with the code. Like, can I take this and go and, like, someone turns around and says, hey, I'll give you some money, for your project. Anyway, if anyone wants to do that, it's fine. But if that did happen, I'd have to go get that cleared with my organisation. So because it's sort of a them thing. But again, the MIT license sort of lets you, if you need to, sort of like fork that code, take it somewhere else, do the other thing. So, should you open source stuff? Absolutely. Wholly encourage it. Have a chat with your employer about it, but yeah, absolutely go out. It's a really great way to, cut your teeth on, not just, contributing to projects, but sort of creating your own projects, learning about whatever it is that tool is you're doing. There's nothing like, it's nothing like learning the nuances of a particular language by someone coming up to you and saying, hey, I've got this problem. I don't know how to code, but this is what it does. How do I fix it? And then you sort of go, okay, great, thanks for that. Sounds like a real problem. Now I actually have to go and learn the code and try and find out how I actually do that. So, sort of like a positive feedback loop there if you want to actually learn how a language or whatever it is works. Yeah. I've already done that slide. And that one. So there's some more benefits from open sourcing your code. And this is more of a, rather than sort of as a, you should contribute to other people's code or whatever it is, I'm sort of going to encourage you to take whatever it is that you've got, if you've got something cool, and sort of like throw it out there. So the first one is like collaboration. So I think I've met more people through this project than I have through any other thing that I've done in the MacAdmins community. So I've chatted to more people. They've sort of reached out to me. We've got, people who, I not necessarily would have interacted with in any other way. And now sort of like, I would consider, sort of good friends and stuff like that. So, transparency on your code. It's really good to have your stuff out there and have the feeling of, well, if I'm going to put this stuff out there, I need it to sort of, be nice and clean and legit and have other people look at it and comment on it. It sort of might feel a bit exposing at first, sort of like put your stuff out there. You sort of think, well, I didn't know how to write code, but, absolutely put it out there because everyone's kind of like in the same boat anyway. So great way to learn. Absolutely great way to learn. So I started this as how to learn SwiftUI, and I absolutely have learned how to use SwiftUI. The code base, every time I look at like code that's more than a year and a half old, it makes me cringe because of what I've learned in the meantime. And I've got a whole bunch of to-dos there and cleaning that up. So feel free to do those to-dos. And the peer review, that obviously comes down with the transparency stuff. So, it's great having other people, having the opportunity to look at your code. There are obviously, common fears with doing that. There's a reason why a lot of people don't open source their stuff. Some of it is not necessarily a technical reason. Some of it might be actually a personal reason. So there is this sort of like idea that you have to sort of create your thing from scratch. Like everything must be created from whole cloth. Go check out the license of code of projects that you use. Right, and have a look at that and see if that's something that you can, incorporate into your own. There's no use trying to reinvent the wheel. Be nice about it. So whenever I've sort of gone and reached out to someone and said, "Hey, can I use your thing?" They're like, "I mean, sure. Like the code is there. Like go use it." And technically they wouldn't have a recourse if I just used it anyway. But it's always a nice thing, and it's sort of like builds trust and stuff like that if you go and ask. But absolutely, if you see someone else has done something and you can sort of either use that in your own project or whatever it is, then just sort of ask. Your code is generally fine. So this is what everyone thinks their code is going to look like when they build it. Generally, it doesn't look like that. This is what you think it looks like, but your code, it works, it does the job, it compiles. It's good enough. If it's self-consistent within its own project, then that's, you've reached like, 80% of what you really should be doing in a project. There's absolutely no problem with your code having a particular style about it, even if that style you think sort of looks a bit junkish. Encourage feedback. You get out there, put your name out there a little bit, and I sort of opened up a channel in the MacAdmin Slack just as a bit of a sounding board for people to come in and do stuff. I would have been happy if I had maybe like 20 people in there. I think there's currently like 1,700. So I'm getting quite a lot of feedback, and it's a great thing. So it helps me improve, not just the way that I code, but also, the product in itself. Ongoing, you have to think about maintenance of your code, right? So it's one thing to actually get your thing and put it out there and say, here it is, and then walk away. But it's another thing to sort of like let it sit there and not do anything. If it's something that you are interested in putting out there, then, keeping it up to date and maintaining it is generally a good thing. Clear documentation. A lot of people write great code, don't write great doco. A lot of people can write great doco, but not write great code. So if you're a good doco writer, then and a good coder, then that's absolutely fantastic. The only way that I know how to actually write documentation is when I think of something and I write that in the code, then I go and write the little paragraph about what that code does, and then that goes in the wiki. The only reason my wiki has even more than 3 pages is because I've just written it a little bit at a time over the course of a few years. A lot of open source tools have documentation like this. So I keep this in mind when I'm sort of thinking about, when putting something out there. I don't want my sort of doc to look like that. So any documentation is fine. If there's a problem with it, people will let you know. But yeah, let's try to avoid that sort of thing. Version control releases. I think Greg did a great demo before about doing PRs and stuff like that. So I don't think I should sort of reiterate over that. I'll have a bit of a chat about DPNotify just for a sec. So just when it comes to maintenance, what's the current problem with DPNotify that anyone has? It hasn't had a commit for 4 years. That's the number one problem. Not that it doesn't run and it doesn't work and it doesn't do exactly what it's designed to do. It works 100%. Still does, has done for the last 4 years. The only problem is it hasn't had a commit. Now, that's not because maintainer's not interested in it. That's not because someone isn't interested in forking it and doing something else. It just hasn't had a commit, and that's like the primary reason that a lot of people are sort of sitting around and questioning, and what are we doing with this? Is this going anywhere? Are we doing anything? All the talk is around the fact that it hasn't been maintained, not that it doesn't actually work, right? So you could write something and it could be written in a script and that could work perfectly fine for 100 years, but if it hasn't seen any sort of activity in amount of time, then yeah, it's not going to commit. Absolutely great product. It still works. If you're using it, it works for you. It's absolutely fantastic. Again, if you are using it and you know anything about code, the code's there. Go and fork it. There's, I think the main repo was moved over to Jamf. But yeah, the code's all there. So they're just not maintaining it. But yeah, I'm sure if Jamf or whoever turned around and actually did a commit to that, even if it was like, hey, just updated this so it runs on, macOS 14 or whatever, everyone would be fine for another 4 years, right? And it would stick around. So, people are happy to sort of like go without maintenance for quite a while. So it's usually not a problem, but up to date every so often sort of gives people that encouragement that it's being looked at, people are looking at it. If I've got a problem, I can reach out and someone might do something about it. Issue tracking and communication, again, I'm probably not going to reiterate over that. There's a previous talk on that, see earlier today. Community engagement. If you're on like GitHub or GitLab or anything like that, they've got discussion pages. Obviously, MacAdmin Slack, you can just go and create a channel to have a specific talk about, whatever it is you want to chat about. If it's just a general thing, there's already channels in there for scripting or other sort of like domains. So, absolutely, if you push something out there, go out and sort of talk about it and sort of talk it up. So people aren't going to use it if they don't know about it. Probably going over that again. So continuous learning and improvement. It's been an absolute journey. Yeah, I can't say more about that, I guess, but yeah, highly encourage people to get out there, even if you want to learn. Just setting some expectations about at putting stuff out there. It's absolutely rewarding. So I'm just going to go out there and say from the outset, do it. It's great. But just sort of be realistic with what kind of engagement you're going to get, right? You're not going to put something out there and everyone's going to go, wow, this is great, fantastic, great, hugs, all that sort of stuff, and give you all that sort of stuff. That's not going to happen on day one. These kind of things, if they do happen, they sort of build, sometimes quite to the surprise of the developer. So thinking about sort of projects and how often they commit and who commits to them. So, having a look at Nudge, for example, you can see there obviously Eric made a great product. There's a whole bunch of people that are sort of committing on there. For some reason, I'm third on the list. I haven't made a commit to Nudge in 2 years. So just sort of like have a guess about who the main maintainer is there. There's a lot of people out there who have got, 1 or 2 commits, and that might just be like I've added a space or something like that. So they're going to show up once. So don't sort of look at that if you're thinking about contributing to some other project and going, oh, there's all these other people and they're all sort of like throwing commits in there and maybe I shouldn't be doing stuff. It's not a race to the top. But yeah, just sort of realistically, if it's your project, you're probably going to be the maintainer for it for the vast majority of the code. Monkey, again, absolutely, like that wall of faces is super encouraging. But I don't envy Greg with the amount of work that you've thrown into Monkey. It's absolutely fantastic, but God, what a mountain. Like it's sort of weird to look at these sort of graphs and stuff like that and sort of think about them, but yeah. So I've experienced the same thing with swiftDialog. So obviously I'm the core maintainer there, but majority of the work and the commits and all that sort of stuff are sort of coming under me, and a lot of that's because someone will come to me and they don't know how to code, right? But they know what they want to achieve. They have an idea. They say, example, could we have get icons from a HTTP source? That's great. So I'll go and write the code and I'll go put it in there, but that's now sort of under me. So it doesn't show that, probably a good, 40% of the commits in there are actually ideas from other people. But yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of, it's going to look like you're just the main maintainer of these things. So just reiterating, if you want to support open source software, there's obviously other ways. So Greg went through a lot of those. Submit feedback, submit feature requests. You can donate multiple things, whether it's time, money, positive vibes, all that sort of stuff. Anything you can do is going to be an improvement to the project. Doesn't matter what it is or how sort of low it is. So coming to events like this and hearing people come up and saying, "Hey, it's great. I've rolled your thing out in so many places and all that sort of stuff." That to me is just, yeah, it's sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but I sort of take that to heart and I use that as encouragement. So again, should you open source your stuff? Absolutely yes. I've done it twice now. One with a from scratch project, and one by taking code that someone else had done, put a lot of work in, but it looked like I had something to contribute to that. I reached out, we did all that sort of stuff, and now Outset 4 is a thing. So yeah, very rewarding. Highly encourage it. Go do it. So I'll just finish this. Greg had a really good start to his talk today. I'm just going to sort of like end mine with a sort of like a similar kind of thing. This is a quote that Charles said to me. We were talking about my code and sort of stuff that I was doing and about some feedback and stuff like that. And I was issuing concerns. It's like, well, look, I feel like I'm just an admin. I'm cosplaying as a developer. I'm not really doing this thing properly. And he was just like, look, dude, like, as far as features, shipping is a feature, right? So write your stuff, put it out there. The world will love you for it. Thank you very much.